Welcome to the first Aaron Tolson Entertainment and Variety Show. My name is Emily Tolson. We're here in Bedford, New Hampshire. We are looking to introduce you to Aaron Tolson, the creator of the show. Welcome.
Well, good morning and thank you.
So we saw each other hours ago, so this isn't much of an introduction for us. However, we wanted to sit down and get to know Aaron, learn about why he decided to do this entertainment and variety show, and to give you guys a little bit of background so that the viewers can get to know you.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I think the very first thing that we should start with, and probably what most people are looking for, is to find out how you got into dance or in the entertainment field.
There's a short answer and a long answer to that question. Mm-hmm. So first I'll give you the short answer, and my mother made me do it. So that's how it all started. Mm-hmm. Dance became a passion of mine, but prior to dancing, I was an actor. And so it started off in print, and I was doing catalogs for Kmart, which, Kmart still exists, and some other companies that don't exist anymore. And that kind of quickly led to some stage work. I remember doing a production of Annie at the Palace Theater in Manchester, New Hampshire. I don't know if I ever told you that before.
I don't think so.
That's so funny. I wasn't very good in the show, but I remember being in the show. Mm-hmm. And then, it led to a lot of commercial auditions and some television shows. So I ended up as a young man. I remember co-hosting a TV show called Just Kidding Around. So I would go in every Wednesday, I would learn my lines, and then we would shoot the show live. It was taped live, so there was no second take. It was like you do it. Now, I say there was no second take, but I remember enough mistakes that I made where they had to say, "Hey, Aaron, don't read her lines at the same time."
Right.
That was those are the biggest things. I would read everybody's lines, and I would know everybody's lines in the show. So when they were speaking, I was mouthing their words, which was, I don't know why I would do such a thing.
How old were you?
I was in 5th grade.
Okay, so like 10 probably.
10, yeah, 4th and 5th grade. And then the show would air on the weekend. So we would shoot on Wednesdays and it would play on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. And then I would go to school on Mondays and my friends would make fun of me for the silly things that I did on TV, which I thought was a really funny thing. Like you would make fun of me for what I was doing on TV. But, kids are kids.
Right.
So yeah, that's how it all started.
So how about dance specifically though? So if you did some print work, you did some acting, you did a little TV. So where did the dance come in? So there were some major roles that I came really close to getting. One of them was a season part on Sesame Street, mm-hmm. which I'm sure would have been life-changing. Yeah. Another
one was to be on The Cosby Show in the 80s. I would have been Vanessa's boyfriend. I was up for the role of Robert.
Okay.
And in these roles, I kept coming down to the final 3, or I remember number 7, when I was the final 7, and you'd get to the last run and they would say, "Okay, we've seen you act. We've seen it all. What else can you do?" Mm. And I would never have anything else. I was like, "Well, I can act." And that was often what would do me in. So my sister was already a dancer, and my mother said to me one day, "You are taking dance class next week." And it wasn't a question, it wasn't a choice, it's just what she said was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I said, "No, I'm not doing that." And she's like, "You absolutely are taking dance class next week." So the next week came and we went to dance class, and I wore my sweatpants and my Velcro sneakers, and I took ballet, and then I took jazz. Mm-hmm. And after 2 hours of my first day dancing, I remember staring out the window. There was actually a low window. I can see it perfectly in my head, and I was crying because it was hard and I was terrible. Yeah. And it's really hard to be terrible at 10 years old. And so I just remember looking out the window and I was trying to get myself together, and the teacher noticed and everybody noticed, of course. And so they tried to encourage me.
Yeah.
And then tap class happened and it wasn't so hard. Mm-hmm. Now, not that tap dancing isn't hard, but whenever I was in the dance studio, I would be most focused on tap class.
Right.
So when the teacher was saying, try this, try this, try this, it wasn't foreign to me. I understood. I was like, I've seen this 100 times. Let me do this. And so quickly, I was able to do shuffles and flaps and cramp rolls in like my first tap class. So within a couple of weeks, I was doing time steps. I was put into routines. Yeah. And by the end of that year, I was competing. So that was 10 years old, and seeing that I am now 18 years old, right. It was just eight years ago. Right. So yes.
So I would argue that ballet is not the foundation of all different disciplines of dance, and it sounds like that maybe that's how it worked for you too, that you didn't have to take ballet and jazz and other forms, that you were gifted in tap, and that's what you stuck with.
Gifted, yes. But I feel like because I took ballet only 4 years. It's terrible to say that, but
4 years?
I took it for 4 years. Huh. And I took jazz for 5 years. I think I took jazz for 5 years.
I can't picture you taking ballet or jazz.
You know, I think there is a video of some of this.
And I haven't seen it.
No, and I think we're going to have to show it on the show.
Okay, I was going to say, is that my Christmas present?
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, and so I think we got to show it. But I actually, whenever I look at these videos, I always say to myself, I have no business being a professional because I was so bad. Yeah. It was so very bad.
But maybe that's a note for anybody who, that's younger and is taking dances. You can be absolutely horrendous at age 10 and still make it.
I was still horrendous by 14 though at at ballet and jazz.
Yeah.
But tap was really it really resonated with me. There was just something about it, the rhythm, and one of the things that I look at it different than a lot of my peers is I'm a math person. Mm-hmm. I enjoy math, and so I see music and I see the math of it. So when I tap dance, sometimes the math comes into play. A lot of times it comes into play. Yeah. Which then it's kind of in being an improvisational artist, it's a bit of a detriment because then I'm not feeling, I'm counting. So I work inside and out of it, but the math of it is what made it, I guess, easier at the beginning.
You mentioned the age of 14, and I know that was a pivotal time for you. Obviously, 14 for entering high school is a special time for anybody, but 14 for you was
monumental,
a memorable time. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I danced at one studio for 4 years, and then I wanted more, and I remember the movie Tap came out, and we went as a family, mom, dad, sister, me. We all went to the movies, and I remember the movie starting and Gregory Hines tap dancing. I can see it. I can feel the moment, and I turned to my mom and I said, "I want to tap like that," and she said, "We'll find somebody to have you tap dance like that." So I want to say it was 2 weeks later. But knowing my mom, it was probably a day later.
Right.
She was like, "We're going to take class in Boston this week." And I was like, "Sure, great, it's exciting." So we went, and that's when I met Julia Boynton. Mm-hmm. And Julia was if people like to define styles of tap dance, she would be a rhythm tap dancer.
Yeah.
She's just a great tap dancer. She was a great teacher, is a great teacher. And I remember going and seeing this class, and I was like, yeah, but I was not allowed to take the advanced class. My sister was allowed to take the advanced class, and I wasn't. Because I was too young. I was younger than her. She's like 18 months older than me. And I was sitting there watching, and she was like, well, he can take this one, and we'll see if he can work his way in. Which to me is a challenge.
Right.
You tell me I can't do something that I really want to do, I'm going to show you that I can do it.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me that.
Well, but I got to tell that.
That competitive spirit is something that perhaps will be a thread of conversation throughout the interview.
So I went in and I started working really hard in class, and so I would take the first class, and then I'd have to sit and watch the second class.
Right.
Yet I would learn what was going on in the second class, and I don't think it was terribly long. I want to say probably 4 weeks in, I was allowed to take the second class, stand in the back, be quiet. As long as it wasn't disruptive, it was okay. Mm-hmm. And then somewhere in that first year of being at the studio, there was an audition in Boston. to be in a show that could potentially go to the Apollo Theater.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the audition, and that's where I met Savion Glover.
Yeah.
And he had, at the time, he had a broken ankle, so he wasn't able to run the audition. And so I was taken with 2 teachers in Boston. The other tap teacher I was taken with in Boston, his name is Josh Hilberman.
Yeah.
He actually currently lives in Brussels, and I get to see him a couple times a year when I travel abroad. He was teaching at the audition. So not only was of course I wanted to do well, and I wanted to get the gig, but my teacher was running it, so I felt really comfortable.
Yeah.
So there was another young tap dancer at this audition that was really a standout, and his name is Derek Grant.
Right.
And as you know, they don't know, as you know, he's one of my very best friends to this day.
Yeah.
But this is how we met. So we were these 2 work hard, young tap dancers, and every time there was a break at the audition, the kids would surround the 2 of us, and we would show them the steps, and we would help them get through it. And in one of these breaks, I remember Savion coming up to me and saying, "Hey, how come I don't know you?"
Yeah.
And I said to him, "I don't know, but you know me now." And that led to a long friendship. We went and played basketball a lot, Derek, Savion, and I, after we got the job, of course. And we had a really, really good time. So it was the beginning, and we performed in Boston, and I want to say it was the Strand Theater that we performed at.
Yeah.
And some of the kids were going to get selected to move on, and I was one of the ones that got selected, and Derek as well. And we got to perform at the Apollo Theater, and it was called the Great Tap Reunion.
Mm-hmm.
It was the cast of the movie Tap.
Right.
So it was super, super fun. And it was a huge moment in my life.
Yeah. So at 14, such an opportunity, meeting all these people in the tap world. And one thing that I'm sure you learned as you went through is the tap world isn't really that big, right? You would see the same people and run into a lot of the same individuals.
There's like a real distinct pattern that happens. So as a young teenager, there's hundreds.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you hit that 18-year-old mark, it's smaller, but there's still a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that after college crowd is when it really shrinks. And then you see who really loves it and who really is doing it for the right reasons, who loves the art form, who's pushing, who's trying to progress.
Right.
And then as you get older, of course, it gets less and less.
Right.
You know, and seeing that I'm just 18 now,
right.
You know, I'm still
right.
in that big crowd.
Right. So we know that you are a professional tap dancer. And often when I say that to people, they're like, "Oh, that's really cool. I don't know anybody who does that." So there aren't a lot of people who say that they're professional tap dancers because a lot of people haven't stuck with it since the age of 10.
Yeah.
But would you say that you do it with no regret? You've done it now for a few decades, so a little while. Is it still like the best decision you've ever made? You
know, I don't look at it as a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college. I got a degree in communications with a minor in business.
Right.
There's a track career we haven't discussed. And if anything, there was one point when I had to make a decision between track and tap dancing. And I felt that was an easy decision because it wasn't, tap dance has tap dance has never felt like work to me. Mm-hmm. So I say to our kids, Daddy's going to work. More for them to know that that's what Daddy does to make money. But whenever I'm inside of those 4 walls with the mirrors, I was just talking to the crew today, like when I'm in a room with a stage or a room of 4 walls and a mirror, it's like the happiest place for me. Mm-hmm. I've been inside of a dance studio for a few decades, and I don't dread it. Yeah. I don't dislike it. I look forward to it. And then I'm always thinking of ways to, how do I go in today and make this interesting? Mm-hmm. What have I not hit on for this particular group? Or when I'm doing like a tap festival where I've never met the people before, like how do I make this exciting? Or how do I make people comfortable? There's a constant puzzle to always be figuring out, never mind constantly working on the tap dancer I am.
Yeah.
So not only am I teaching people, but I've also got to maintain myself as a performer And I don't know of any other than entertainment profession where I would be doing that.
Right.
So yes, it would be the best decision I ever made. That's how I met you.
Yeah, so clearly, we couldn't take that back. But let's rewind a little bit back. We were talking about when you were 14 and you were dancing at the Apollo. You met Derek Grant, you met Savion Glover, Gregory Hines, all these notable names in the world of tap dance. Then you said after high school, which sometimes you don't brag enough, but Aaron was president of his high school class at Memorial in Manchester, setting records in track, getting a full scholarship to St. John's University in Queens, New York. But at that time, you were in Queens going to school, commuting to Manhattan to do as much tap as you could. So tell us about that sort of...
So I was really fortunate. I got recruited by a bunch of colleges. Mm-hmm. I got offered a full scholarship to 7 colleges, and 2 other ones were going to let me come in for really, really cheap. Mm-hmm. Those particular schools weren't allowed to give out full scholarships. They were Ivy Leagues, and they weren't allowed to...
Just a couple Ivy League schools.
They weren't allowed to give out athletic scholarships, so they had a way of bringing you in. So when I went and visited 5 schools to make my decision of where I wanted to be, and at the time I was looking at being an engineering major or a math major, and of course running, but dance was so important to me that was playing into it. So I remember being in Georgia at Georgia Tech on my recruiting trip, and we were standing out on the track, and he showed me like, this is where you would be, and the Olympics had been there just recently. And he's like, this is where you'd be running, and you can see the city, and it was just really cool. And then I said to him, yeah, well, what are the chances of me to tap dance here, though? And the coach was like, probably none.
Right.
And then he got into like how it was a science of how fatigued you were and how much you would work out and every aspect of it. And so it was intriguing because the Olympics were going to hit again while I was in college. Mm-hmm. And Georgia Tech had athletes go to the Olympics. So that was one of my goals in my life. I want to go to the Olympics, and I had qualified for Olympic trials while I was in high school, but I had just barely hit the qualifying mark, so I didn't go to the trials.
Right.
But I knew I could get there. So yes, it's one of my goals, but if I went there, I wasn't going to tap dance.
Right.
So I went to other schools, UPenn, Northeastern, and then I went to St. John's, and we went on the recruiting trip, and, there, when you see the city, you see, Manhattan.
Right.
And then I remember talking to my coach, and I said, hey, what about tap dancing? Like, when am I going to have time for that? And he said, whenever you're done. Just when you're done practice, go do what you got to do. Right. And I was like, well, this is where I should be.
Yeah.
So then getting to college and then starting to train as a Division I athlete, I didn't realize what that meant. Mm-hmm. And the fatigue that came with the amount of training that I was doing, because often I would get up in the morning, I would go to track practice, mm-hmm. and I would go to class, and then after class, I would go to track practice, and then I would go to the weight room, and then I was free.
Yeah.
But then it would typically be 5 or 6 o'clock at night.
Right. And most people at that point were probably like going home, studying, resting.
Yeah.
College kids love a nap, right?
Yeah.
So most people were heading back to their apartment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I found that, and actually at the time, Savion was teaching in the city. So mm-hmm. I would go when he was teaching, I would show up at his class. And I wasn't really able to get everything out of class. I was so tired.
Right.
And so at first I was going as much as I could, and then I slowed down, and then I had to really focus on track, because what people don't often realize is that when you get a full scholarship to college, it's supposed to be 4 years, but you have a 1-year renewable contract. So
right.
if you don't live up to your standards, they can say, hey, thanks, but we're not going to have you back.
Right.
So...
And like probably a lot of athletes, you needed the scholarship to go to school. I mean, St. John's wasn't obviously an inexpensive venture.
Yeah. One of the things said to me when I was in high school is, my mom came up to me and she said, if you don't get a full scholarship to college, you're not going to college.
Mm.
So that was some added pressure in high
Right.
school. And then being there, knowing that what I had to do. So I danced as much as I could. And then it kind of got less and less as my track career was blossoming. I remember I was ranked number 1 in the Big East. I was really, I had broken the St. John's. I had a few school records.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the fastest athlete they ever had on their team.
Yeah.
So there was high expectations. There was the thing called Metropolitan Championship, and it was Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and I won it every year. So I had this title that I was carrying through college every year. Like, I was going to get dethroned, and then it didn't. I kept winning, and then, a lot of that has to do with people being injured, being available, all that kind of stuff. But my senior year of college, I got really hurt. I had a stress fracture in my shin, and I had to not run. So tap dancing was there, and yet I couldn't tap dance. Then I had like this shin brace that I felt that was like holding my shin together. It was this crazy, crazy time. And in this crazy time, I get a phone call from Savion. He says to me, hey, are you still tap dancing? And I was like, yeah, of course. He's like, can you come down to the theater? And I was like, yeah, of course. Right. So at this point, I had healed enough where I could tap dance.
Right. But in reality, you weren't really dancing
I wasn't.
As much as you would have liked to have been.
Correct.
Right.
But I still wasn't allowed to run yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down to the theater. I talked to Savion. We just sat there and we talked. Show after the show, and then Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk is the show that was on Broadway.
Right.
And then I went home. And then I started going to the theater often, almost every day. I'd either speak to Savion on the phone or I'd go down to the theater. Lo and behold, one of my best friends, Derek Grant, was in the show. And one day I'm backstage and I'm sitting there with Savion and we're talking, and Derek's sitting there talking to us, and he says, did you bring your shoes with you? I said, of course I did. He goes, oh, shit. He runs out the dressing room. And then he comes back and he goes in the room across the hall. I put my shoes on, go across the hall. We dance. And it's, Derek being so supportive is a really cool moment. But I remember when I danced, I remember Savion's reaction at that time. And he laughed when I danced. And I didn't know what that meant. Mm-hmm. And so he left the room, and then Derek went after him after the room, and I was just kind of there. So I just kind of kept shuffling around. Then they came back, and then Derek danced again, and then I danced. And then Savion laughed again and left. And the night kind of ended, and it was a weird situation. I didn't know what that meant or what that was. So a few days go by, and I'm back at the theater, and I remember I said, Save, so, so what do you think? What about me? And he goes, you're all right. You're all right. And I remember those words. Yeah. You're all right. So.
Not super encouraging or positive.
No, right. No. But he's a unique person. So it wasn't negative. And yeah. I also took that. So soon after I got a phone call from this company called 101 Productions, and they asked me if I could come down on a Friday and be available to do some dancing. I said, sure. So Friday comes, and I'm sitting in this rehearsal studio in New York City, and I'm terrified because I don't know what I'm in for. Mm-hmm. And this young man walks in, and he sits down nearby me, and I said, hey, you here with Savion? He goes, yeah, I'm here for the same. Oh, it's great. And so that's when I met Jason Samuel Smith. And Jason is one of the world's greatest tap dancers. And we both were the only two brought into this event. And it was a rehearsal, but not really. So they started showing us choreography from the show. And we were there for 3 hours. And then we left. Mm-hmm. And that was it. There was no, we'll call you, we'll see you. It was 3 hours. Jason and I walked out, and it was like, what was that? I was like, I don't know. And we both went home, and we exchanged phone numbers, and we were friendly. And then next week, I get a phone call. Hey, can you come back on Friday? yeah, I can come back on Friday. I go in, Jason and I again. This time there's somebody else from the cast in there. So it was Savion, Derek, Omar, and a piano player.
This is still all for Bring in the Noise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we go through another day like this. And then the pattern continues for a couple of months of going on a Friday, leaving, not knowing anything about anything, and then getting a phone call next week saying, hey, can you come back next week? So that was, it's some sort of union rule, however it goes. And it was exciting and then terrifying at the same time because like, there's something I really want. I want to be on Broadway, but I don't know if I'm doing the thing that I need to be. Like, this is foreign to me. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And then one week, there was no school, and I came back to New Hampshire, and this is the days of the beeper.
This is late 90s, right? Like,
yeah, late 90s.
97, 98?
97.
97.
Yeah, 97. It could be 96. It might be the fall time. And I get a beep from Derek, and I call him back. He's like, where you been? I've been trying to call you. And I was like, oh, I'm in New Hampshire. He's like, oh, we've got a rehearsal today. And I was like, oh. And I was like, what time? And I don't remember the exact detail, but let's say it was 4. And when he called me, it was noon.
Yeah.
And I said, I can make a 4 o'clock rehearsal from New Hampshire. That's 4 hours. I said, I'll be there. Jumped in my car, started driving to New York, hit traffic. I remember calling, hey, I'm coming, I'm going to be there, whatever. They said, okay, great. And I kept going. So it ended up taking me about 7 hours to get to New York that day. I get there. I mean, I drove all the way into the city. I remember parking my car. I run up to the studio. Nobody's there.
Yeah.
I drove over to the theater. Nobody's there. I mean, there was no point for me to drive over to the theater, but I'm just in a, I wanted to say, hey, I really tried. I was trying to be here.
Yeah.
Go back to my apartment. The next day, Jason calls me. He said, hey, I got a contract. Did you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I didn't say no. I was like, oh, maybe they left me a message. So I listened to my voicemail. Of course, there's no contract. It's Saturday. I don't hear from them. So Monday I call the production company. I'm like, hey, so did I miss anything? Is there anything? And they're like, no, we're going to suspend those rehearsals for now. And we'll be in touch.
Right.
So
a low point in the...
A low point.
Right.
I felt like I had blown it by going home. But, in the long term, I know it's not that. Jason is absolutely amazing. And he absolutely deserved the job. And so that's where it all ended for a short while.
Right.
Soon I got a call asking me to come back and audition again to be part of a training program. Right. So I went in, had an audition. There was 10 people auditioned. They took 8. And that led to, we called it Funk University. It was the New York Shakespeare Festival of something or other. Okay. That the parent company, which was the public theater that was running Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk, was putting on to train dancers to be in the show. Yet the contract stated that in no way, shape, or form are you part of Bringing the Noise and the Funk, and you weren't allowed to go to the theater. You weren't allowed to go be around them. Unless you had a ticket to the show. So are you still in college at this point? I'm still in college. Okay. And I'm not running. Right. So I signed this contract, and it was for, I want to say 3 months, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, come in and train to be a tap dancer that could potentially audition to be in the show. Right. Now, my contract was a little different than the rest of the guys that got the job because I was the only one in college, and I was in my senior year of college. Right. So my contract stated that I needed to finish college. I couldn't just drop out of college and try to be part of this. Right. Which was, I thought was really kind. Supportive, yeah, right, because you weren't going to I would have dropped everything and tried to, I was like, I'm going to be on Broadway, I'm going to do this. Which made me come to rehearsal 2 days a week late, which was acceptable mostly, but it made my experience different than everybody else's. Right. So at the end of that 3 months, there was an audition, everybody got in, or a graduation, and George Wolfe came over and Savion sat in, and everybody sat there and everybody did these routines that we had learned, and then we all did our individual piece that we had choreographed to show how much we had grown and who we were. And then that was it.
Right.
And then they handed out 7 contracts. And there was 8 of us in the training.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the one person that did not get a contract.
Yeah. Maybe another low point.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the entertainment world, and that's
Yeah.
how it works with auditions and performing is you'll get the gig sometimes and sometimes you won't.
Most of the time you won't.
Right. So you're here in your senior year of college, you've done the Apollo Theater, and you've auditioned for Bring in the Noise, you've done Funk You, then you graduate college.
I went back and ran.
Okay.
Before
back in college.
before it was all said and done, I had healed up enough to get back on the track. And I remember like when I walked down to the track, the team very sarcastically applauded me because I had missed the whole year.
Yeah.
And it was bittersweet because there's something about being out on that track and the spring and the smell and the way the sun sits. All that means something to me because track was a huge part of my life. And I ended up coming in 9th in the eastern half of the United States, which when I finished, I remember walking off the track and my coach was standing there and he said to me, now imagine if you had been here all year, like where would you have been?
Right.
But yet it was an injury and there was nothing I could do about it.
Right.
So it was a sad ending. There's a lot of track stories. We won't go into them, but there was some lows and lows and some super highs, but there's some real lows too. But yeah. So I got my degree, graduated college, and it was time to. I had an internship. Somehow I was able to squeeze in an internship at WCBS FM in New York, and they offered me a job at the end of my senior year as well. They said to me, "We don't think you want this job," and I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not. It's not what I want to do."
Right.
And so I graduated college with no job and pretty much no direction.
Right. Well, that's not unlike a lot of college graduates, except maybe some don't get a job offer.
Yeah.
But so after college, one of your maybe most memorable and one that's provided you with a lot of travel opportunities came after that. Tell us about your stint in Riverdance.
So Riverdance came 3 years after I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
In between that 3 years, there was a lot of hard work, a lot of failure.
Yeah, struggle.
There was some success.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually ended up training for Bring in the Noise again.
Mm-hmm.
2 more times. 2 more sessions of 3 or 4 months. One of them was really loose. So I was never really considered part of that group,
mm-hmm.
but the last one actually Derek was running it. So Derek was helping the tour get out on the road, and he basically was training me to be a dance captain, and I was working. Long story short, at the end of that one, I didn't get the job.
Right.
But there was a job that did happen after that called Absolute Tap,
mm-hmm.
which is probably the best paying, least glamorous job I've ever had. It was 3 days a week, performing in nightclubs and bars, tap dancing, performing, selling Absolute vodka. And
which, if you know Aaron, that's like 2 things that you don't even associate with your name. Like, Aaron is not a go out late type of bar club scene, and then having anything to do with vodka is just not his gig. So I can tell that wouldn't be perhaps the best fit.
No, and some of the performance venues would just be the crowd would just really hate it, and it was so you'd go into someplace and the music would be playing, and we'd come in, we put our tap floors down, and they pull that music off, and the audience would be like, oh, and then we start tap dancing, and people were like, oh, and then would like turn out their backs on us and go back to talking,
right?
And it was
that feels good.
Yeah, it was really. Yeah, I do remember one of the craziest moments. It was Austin, Texas. We were at a place, and we go out there and we start dancing, and somebody came up to me and tried to put $1 in my pants.
Oh.
So that wasn't fun either.
That's a different type of performance.
Yes, that's not where the performance was going. And so, but it was kind of humiliating.
Yeah.
It was just like, well, what am I doing? And it made it tough.
Yeah.
It made it tough.
It makes you question your choices.
Yeah. And so, we went through it, and then there was this other moment at Swing 46. Swing 46 is a jazz club in New York City, and they used to have tap jams every Sunday night. And you either would go there and hone your skills. Whenever I tap jam, I like to call it public practice. But you go in and you dance your heart out. And one of my friends, Buster Brown, old famous great master of tap dancing, would run the tap jams. And there was his birthday party one day, and everybody in New York was there. Every tap dancer in New York was there, and we'd go there, and I showed up with Sharon, and Sharon got pulled up right away, and she pulled me with her, and we got to trade, and and this was my moment. I was going to show everybody, like, I didn't get that job, but look what I'm doing now.
Right.
And Sharon and I started trading, and it ended up being really bad for me because she really, really showed me up in front of everybody that I wanted to impress.
Right.
And I remember walking off, and I remember Sabion's mom, Yvette Glover, saying, "Hey, Aaron, she got you." And I was, yeah, she got me. And then I remember Max Pollack, who was one of the greatest, he's a great, great tap dancer, great person, put his arm around me and said, "It happens to all of us, one time or another." And that he proceeded to give me exercises and things I needed to do to practice to make sure it didn't happen again. One of the things that I learned from that to make it never happen again was that my intentions were wrong. How I went into the situation wasn't set up for success. I set myself up to fail by trying to prove myself. I didn't have to prove myself.
Right.
I just needed to go out there and dance, which is how I ended up in Riverdance. So this leads me back to to Riverdance, because these things had happened, these failures had happened, these moments had happened. And I was at an absolute, just a complete down. I remember my dad calling me and saying, maybe you should take more class. So I'm going to send you some more money, and you can go take class. And maybe that'll help you get to where you want to go. And I remember being really, really insulted. Because, what do you mean? I know what I'm doing. Which was part of the problem.
Yeah.
But it was a really great gesture from my father. But it resonated with me because it was like, something's missing. I'm doing something wrong. What is this? What is not happening? So this Riverdance audition happened after a little bit of communication with the company. And I remember sitting there, and there was about 60 tap dancers auditioning for the job. They wanted one person. And in the practice room, the waiting room, which I would call the practice room, because if you saw what was going on in that room, you would absolutely think that you're in a dance studio. People were just going at it and showing off and just, really, really excited to get there. But also your personality was coming out as this, like, I'm going to get this job. And I remember sitting at a table and watching the whole scene go on. I didn't want to be that person. I was really defeated in my career at that point because there had been so many bad moments. What I didn't know is that the company was looking at how people behaved in that room as much as they were looking at what happened in there. So those hotshot bravado tap dancers were all cut immediately. They walked into the room and they did something and they were like, "Thank you." And then they went from 60 to 30. They went from 30 to 5. And then I remember the last 5, they were like, "What else can you do?" And that is the word that sentence is from when I was a kid. What else can you do? I was like, "Oh, I'm tap dancing now. I thought I was doing it." Right. So they wanted to see, can you backflip? Can you
sing?
Anything.
Right.
So I had a little jazz split that I could pull out, and I did my little jazz split.
From your 4 years of
jazz,
jazz and ballet. Okay.
I was able to hit it though. I was able to land it and get right up out of it. So that was a pretty cool trick. And then the next day they offered me a job. And it was Sean O'Brien called me, "We got a job for you." It was like, "When can you start?" And I was like, "When do you want me to start?" And they're like, "Can you fly out tomorrow?" And I was like, "Well, I need a little bit of time." So I said, "Can you give me 7 days?" They said, "We'll give you 7 days." And I proceeded to go around all the places that I worked at in New York, because at that time I was teaching at 4 dance studios, maybe 5 dance studios. And I was working at a video game store to make ends meet. And I went from place to place and quit all my jobs in a week's time, said goodbye to everybody, and started a tour that I did for, a tour and Broadway that lasted 6 years.
Right. It's a really long stint in one show. But it provided you with a ton of connections, people that you still talk to on a weekly basis, but also opportunities to travel, right? Yeah. So I know when we met, I think you had been to 48 states?
48. No, I had been to 40. I hit one after the show.
Yeah, so 47 states. Yeah. And then he's also been to numerous countries. You've seen lots of different cultures, and that's something, that we talk about is important for our kids, is to see different cultures and such, but you experienced that certainly at sort of a young age. But can you tell us about some of the places that you've been that TAP has brought you to? I know, but some of the viewers might not know some of the places that it's brought you to. Where can dance take you?
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing journey that I've been able to go on. And I honestly, maybe the first couple of weeks I was on the road, I kind of took it for granted. But then again, I don't know. It's the first time I had any type of money in my life.
Right.
So I remember having packages of candy. I would buy big bags of M&Ms and licorice and Snickers, and I would just go to town because I could. I didn't have money to buy that kind of stuff before. And I remember getting sick the first week into the show because I wasn't giving myself nutrition. So there was that. And then I always remember the first week I was on tour, we went out with wardrobe to find what I was going to wear in the show. And we were walking through the mall and I saw this poster. And it was Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, and Robert Parrish. It was a black and white poster and the numbers on their jersey were in green. And I said, whoa, that's amazing. I want that. And we were in North Carolina. I don't know why this was up there. And Christine, I remember said to me, you should buy it. And I was like, I don't have any place to put it. Why would I want to? She's like, well, you should ship it home to yourself because you may never see it again. And I was like, I'll get it next time I see it. I still was my first week on the road. I still had no money. I didn't get a paycheck yet.
Right.
And I never saw it again. Naturally. So that those words have always rung with me because whenever I see something, whenever I have the opportunity to do something, I do it. So I remember being Palm Desert, California, and one of my friends was like, hey, I'm going to go on a hot air balloon ride. I said, okay, I'll go with you because I'd never done that before.
Right.
I don't know, I would go to all the local coffee shops and have local coffee. I would try to have local food from someplace. It was just really fun. We landed in Atlanta and we were going to a smaller area of Georgia. And when we got to the airport, I saw the +33 on my 31, I can't remember, on my phone, and it was Ireland calling me. And I picked up and they were like, hey, we need you to go to Germany. And I said, oh, they're like, yeah, somebody got hurt. We need you to go over there and dance. I said, okay, when do I go? They said, oh, you're going right now. And I was like, oh. So I got my suitcase off of the turnstile. I had to get my costume and then went right back into the airport and I flew to Germany and I went into the hotel. I remember pushing my bag into the room and not even going in the room. I just pushed my bag in the room, closed the door, and went to the theater and did the show. So I'd never performed in Germany. I never performed overseas, period. So I was like, I wanted to get there. I wanted to get on stage. And I get to the theater and they're like, the show was happening when I got to the theater. And they're like, you can just do the night show tonight. We'll do it a one-man show in the daytime. And I said, no, I'll do it. It's fine. It's the same show. But it's not.
Right.
So what I didn't realize was their stage was twice as big as the stage I was doing in the States. Because they were playing arenas and in the States we were playing theaters. So I went out there and I was like, I walk on stage, and then I remember looking at the stage and the audience and going, "Oh, geez, I should have waited till tonight because I don't know my marks." So I kind of fall around the other dancer, and maybe through the performance, and it wasn't the best performance of mine in the world, but yet it was a super fun performance. So I remember between shows, the hotel was too far away, so nobody went back to the hotel. And everybody was like, "Oh, we got this crazy week. We got to go to Prague tomorrow, and then we got to go to the Brecon Hungary the next day, and we got to go to Budapest after that." And I was like, we get to go to Prague tomorrow. We get to do
that. Right.
Because I didn't, and so just me being that person, I was super excited. I helped the whole cast.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of cities or countries in a short stint in 10 days that they were dreading, and I thought was the most exciting.
Right. What an opportunity to be able to fill a passport.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, what a blast! I had such a blast. I just remember, like, I would get up in the morning and just walk. I don't know where I would go. I don't know how. I would just try to know how far away I was and just walk and come back. And then I remember Prague. They laid out magazines on everybody's chair because they had some sort of sponsor. And so I remember taking the magazines and taking pictures of these arenas because I was only playing theaters at the time. It was really crazy to do an arena tour. That was just not something I was used to. So that was one of the. What was that? So we started off in Germany, in Berlin, and then we went to Prague. And then I remember we stopped in Austria to have dinner. Mm-hmm. So I got to get another country in, and then we went to Debrecen, Hungary, and then Budapest, Hungary. It was super cool. So yeah, I got 47 states out of it. I got quite a few countries out of it.
Yeah, Australia, you didn't mention.
I did Australia for 3 months.
Yep.
Did the UK for a little while. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing run of 6 years.
Right. And not to mention, you mentioned it really briefly, but of course the tour brought you to countries in different states, but you also were on Broadway and performed at Radio City Music Hall.
Oh yeah, we did Radio City. I forget.
Right. So these places that people go and take pictures under the signs in the streets, it's really special that you've been able to perform there.
Really fortunate. Yeah, Radio City, we did, and not only did we do Radio City, we did Radio City the week of St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
So for Riverdance to be in Radio City, it was just a huge celebration, the parade. It was just super, super great.
Right. So after Riverdance, you left the tour in order to pursue a show that you were working on with Derek. So he is a common thread throughout your story.
My career.
Not on accident. Yeah. Right. So he's also the godfather to one of our kids too. So clearly part of, our extended family. But cut to winter of 2006 and when you started working on Imagine Tap.
So I left Riverdance at Christmas 05.
Right.
And immediately, the show was Derek had already been working on the choreography. Mm-hmm. So I came to New Hampshire and then I went to New York and continued with Derek in the choreography, and one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen was the music of a show being built around choreography. Derek had ideas in his head, so what we would do is he would teach me the choreography, I would dance it, and then Zane Mark, who was a Tony Award winner,
right,
would work the music around. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And then we collected some of the world's best tap dancers.
Right.
And we put on this multi-million-dollar production called Imagine Tap in Chicago that ran for 4 weeks at the Harris Theater. Mm-hmm. And it was definitely one of the best times of my life.
Right.
You were there for it. You got to see it.
That was the beginning of us being together. So obviously, it was one of the best times of your life. Yes. But after Imagine Tap, which had its ups and downs, which is a whole other show if we needed to talk about that, and maybe someday. After Imagine Tap, you came back to New Hampshire, did different things here. We bought a house together.
I worked at the Boston Conservatory.
Worked at the Boston Conservatory, and, Plymouth State University, other dance studios, still working with Riverdance here and there, training in new tap dancers,
still do.
Right, still lots of opportunities there. And then I remember the conversation with Derek at the Beantown Tap Festival a few years ago. And we had made the decision basically in a parking garage in Boston that we were going to leave New Hampshire, go to New York City and just start fresh. So Aaron and I both left here with no job and just moved to New York City, which is probably a gutsy move in hindsight, but it worked out for the best. That you started to really lay down the foundation of what it looked like to be a tap dancer in New York City again.
Yeah, it was like recreating myself because I had a reputation of working with kids. And so I needed the world to see that I could work with adults and help people be better dancers. So I ended up getting a job at Perry Dance, which was the first studio to really take me in New York. And then I worked at Steps on Broadway, which was really a great place. But Broadway Dance Center welcomed me with open arms, and they really, really loved having me. So it was really working and trying to figure out what was next for me, which led to Soul Power Fitness.
Right.
And Soul Power is a tap dance fitness class that I created, and my friend Sean Perrine, who's the editor-in-chief of Muscle and Fitness magazine, challenged me to see if I could say, hey, can you be the guy to do this? And with all these things happening, I got picked up by a major gym, Crunch, and days after being picked up from Crunch, it was on Kelly and Michael. It was live with Kelly and Michael.
Right.
So it was these like crazy things that we made these decisions, and all of a sudden I'm on national TV in front of 8 million people. Kind of like right now, in front of 8 million people.
Right. Naturally. But that was something I remember Charlotte, our daughter, our oldest, sitting in the living room saying, Daddy's going to be on TV soon, which is so fun. And then a couple days later was Good Day New York.
Good Day New York, yeah.
So in a couple mornings after that, we were like, okay, well, let's watch Daddy again on TV, which is, of course, fun that not a lot of people get that chance to be able to see Daddy on national TV. So while we were in New York, obviously pushing Soul Power, you were teaching at Broadway Dance Center, occasionally at Steps on Broadway, Perry Dance, Capizio Center, constantly working.
We've almost alluded that So Danza.
Yeah, so Danza has been a long time thread through the last decade or so, right?
Years. Yeah. I ended up becoming the national spokesperson with Derek. We're the co-national spokespeople for So Danza. So we helped them design their shoe, make it feel better, make it look better.
Right.
And I ended up landing a lifetime contract with them.
Right. So this is you guys designing this professional shoe for aspiring professionals or professionals, right? To wear so that they have a comfortable, well-made shoe. Right. That sounds good. Yeah, that's always fun to be able to go down. You have lots of photo shoots that you've done with them to help promote the product, and it gets put in full page ads and in Dance Magazine and Dance Spirit.
Yeah, it's really, really fortunate. I really feel blessed to have that. And now I'm back at the Boston Conservatory. Right. We moved back to New Hampshire, and I got they brought me back. So that's really super cool.
Yeah. So it keeps you busy with, of course, we have 2 daughters together, Charlotte and Alexis, which if anybody needs an incredible amount of stamina to be able to tap dance for a living, but also be a dad to 2 girls, you have it. And I think that they have so much fun being able to dance with you. We've got a couple opportunities where we've had them put on their tap shoes and dance with Daddy. They're both in class now. Charlotte says that she would like to tap dance, but wants to be a dog vet. So that's her want right now. But who knows? Maybe she'll want to continue to dance and be able to do that as she grows older. So tell us now, we know that we are back here in Bedford. What has motivated you to be interested in running the Aaron Tolson Entertainment and Variety Show?
So throughout my career, I've had a lot of opportunities presented to me. I've had a lot of people support me, and I've had a lot of as many failures as I've had, which will be in the book. The successes that I've had have often been around somebody helping. And one of the things that I've always said that I wanted to be part of is I wanted to help provide a lot of jobs for a lot of people.
Right.
And Imagine Tap was an opportunity to employ a lot of people. And I want to do something more. So I've been on TV, I've been on stage, I've been able to have lots of people see me do what I do. So I thought that if I could create a venue where people could come and showcase their skills, I could host that. I could bring people in and say, hey, why don't you come in let me interview you. Let's talk about what you do. Let's see what you do. Let the world see what you do. You get a great, you'll get a great interview out of it because I'm a great interviewer.
Right, naturally. Right.
And you'll get as great of a performance as you can give me, and you'll have that forever. So I said, let's do it. And I approached BCTV and I said, hey, can we do this? And they were like, yeah, we can do that. So
right.
Here we are.
Okay, so when it comes to submitting for the Aaron Tolson Entertainment and Variety Show, we're looking at talent that's New Hampshire based or outside New Hampshire. What are the parameters that you're looking for?
Well, as long as you can get here, you can be on the show.
Okay.
So it doesn't just have to be New Hampshire. I do favor New Hampshire because it's where I'm from, and
sure.
There's great talent here. And of course, with great talent comes great responsibility, because I'm a geek. So.
Yeah, I know that, but I think slowly all the viewers will learn that you are a nerd and geek at heart.
So all I need from people, though, is to send an email to the Aaron Tolson Show at gmail.com. Okay. And in that email, I would like to see a link to a video, a resume, a headshot, and maybe your credit card number so I can go shopping.
Right.
Whatever you like to give me to, it would be great. But yeah, that's all I'm really looking for. And I'd like we're going to showcase them on this stage here at the Bedford Town Hall. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so you're looking for tap dancers, singers, musicians, instrumentalists, ventriloquists, magician, all of it, whatever it is. Okay. Yeah. So that's something that we hope that everyone tunes in for. We're hoping that lots of people submit their information online so that Aaron would get a chance to feature you and be able to create that memory. Really, once you end up on video and on TV, it provides so many opportunities that you never know where it'll take you after that. Yeah. Absolutely. Perfect. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell us before we wrap up today? Nah, I think we're just going to have a really great time, I think it's really good. I want everybody to know that this is a former Miss New Hampshire right here, Miss New Hampshire 2006, and I was her choreographer for Miss America, and it was a super good time. Yeah, that's the beginning of the relationship, the beginning of the end. Yes. Right. Yeah, it feels like forever ago, but once upon a time, you choreographed for me for Miss America, and we've had a lot of common friends before that, and you worked with me for years prior to that. But when you take it to the next level for Miss New Hampshire, for Miss America, you really have to work with the best. So I made sure to do that and try my hardest. And you won't see me too much. It's not the Emily Tolson Variety Show, but Aaron will be hosting the show and being able to provide everyone opportunities to be on television and feature it in a small community like Bedford, but be able to provide you more of an exposure, perhaps on beyond. On the internet, that video gets to be yours forever. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sitting down. We appreciate BCTV and having us here, and we look forward to seeing all your submissions as they come in online. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks.